Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of Future Proof, the podcast where we're decoding how founders, leaders, and execs are reshaping the business landscape using AI, data, and automation. So if you're looking to future-proof your business, you're definitely listening to the right audience and the right podcast. Before we jump in, we always offer this at Deploy AI. We're here to help. And if you want to have a 30-minute conversation with us about where to get started putting AI into your business, we're happy to have a 30-minute call with you and just kind of point you in the right direction. And there's links in the show notes. But let's jump into today's episode. I am joined by Eric Daimler, from the CEO of Conexus. Eric, thank you for joining us and spending some time with us.
It's good to be here.
Awesome. All right. So as we always do, let's start with you, kind of your background. I call it leader's journey, and just kind of your career path leading up to it, because it's very interesting. So
yeah, thanks. If people know me, how they might know me is I was the first AI advisor in the White House under President Obama and later President Trump. The science advisor, non-political, advising on issues around AI inside of the U.S. federal government. I have been doing AI for 20 plus years. You know, my Ph.D. is in the area, researcher at Carnegie Mellon, and then at Stanford, faculty, you know, an assistant dean in computer science. I was a venture capitalist on Sand Hill Road, and I started, I think I'm now on number 6, where I run now an MIT AI spin-out. So I've been doing AI from a lot of different angles, and then, you know, most recent is serving in a capacity in government. So I've seen a lot of different places that AI can be deployed, and the bottlenecks from some of the world's largest AI deployments. That's
Awesome. And so tell us about your latest venture, Conexus, and kind of what you guys do, problems you're looking to solve, and the type of clients that you serve.
Yeah. Conexus was started, as things do, as U.S. government-funded research at MIT to solve this problem of guaranteeing the integrity of these very sophisticated computer systems. I found out about it when I was in the U.S. government, then we spun it out, and I put money in, and later we got venture capital to turn what had been research into a commercial product, and then something with it went into general availability just about 18 months ago, and scale this up globally. Our clients are generally large organizations, just because time is limited. Opportunity are vast, but same effort goes into the big companies as the medium-sized ones.
Amen.
We address these problems of data model, or today's vernacular, AI deployment integrity. You know, everybody can be experimenting with chatbots, but equally everybody knows the vulnerabilities that they present to organizations and one's career as things can go bad. What our systems do is provide these guardrails around AI for AI integration, guaranteed governance, and really making sure that you have this assuredness around the validation of these integrity of the systems. And that's something the largest organizations are definitely willing to pay for.
And so we've had this topic come up a lot, Eric, about, you know, how to leverage the LLMs, right, that are available, the vulnerabilities as you discussed, versus how to, as I get a lot of founders saying, you know, Brent, data rich and insight poor, right? Because our data is massive scale, it's all over the place, it's siloed, right? And I feel like what you're talking about is the answer to that for large organizations. Is that how they see it when you come in, of making that data available and layering the AI models, right, to you know, not only enforce the integrity, right, but also drive the insights and the usage out of it?
There's several problems identified in the excellent points you made. One really big one is that you can only do analysis on the data that's available to you. If data exists in different silos, that makes it very hard. One of our largest deployments so far has been with Uber. And Uber, as a Conexus client, came to us with this growing problem of having started their business city by city. So they had databases for every city. So they had a database for San Diego, a database for Los Angeles, a database for maybe the Santa Barbara County. And this exploded into not just a business intelligence friction. What does driver supply look like in the event of a Lakers game? But also it was a privacy issue or a data compliance issue across jurisdictions where you might have license plates or driver's licenses with different sensitivities across jurisdictions, across county lines, state lines, and this is global in its problem. And so Uber had grown to expand this team of, I think it was a couple of hundred people that had to answer questions for leadership just around supply and demand, but also ensuring the conformity to government regulations. And so this is what I mean about Conexus supplying this governance AI guardrail system for these companies. So Uber looks to Conexus to create a unified data model. With this unified data model globally, we did, in this particular case with Uber, we composed, and again, this is our largest deployment ever, 300,000 databases into one universal data model.
Wow.
And that allowed for the redeployment of these couple of hundred people into frankly more interesting jobs. People say that automation is going to replace jobs, but these were kind of boring jobs, and the people in that work did not want to be doing this work of just doing statistical comparisons
it's just grunt work,
cities
right?
over and over. It really is. It's an IT grunt work. So we could redeploy them into more interesting work, good for everybody, good for the business, better, more interesting for the workers because the work did need to get done, and an alacrity for leadership in answering business intelligence questions and an assuredness for regulators that Uber was conforming to the restrictions put on by government, and that builds trust. So really goodness all around. To have Uber tell it, we save them 10 to 15 million US a year in the benefit just in the business efficiency, let alone the not even counting what they might say is the automation of the headcount that had been deployed inside of this work. So that's an example of just one of the problems, consolidating these data silos into a unified data model that can bring a benefit to large companies. And that has to happen before you put on any sort of chatbot or any other sort of analytics in this case to get benefit.
And so, and I would imagine, right, just again on a sliding scale of breadth, right, that's a massive one, right, of 300,000 databases and trying to consolidate them. But I would imagine any enterprise, whether you're in the mid-market all the way up through the enterprise, it's just the breadth of where your data lives. But I would imagine most companies are facing similar challenges, right? They have disparate systems. They have data in those systems. They don't integrate or talk to each other well, right? Integration's always issues and pain points and maintenance issues of upkeep, right, for IT departments all across. Tell me how you see that problem as we go forward, because I feel like I hear that over and over, Eric, and what you guys are doing and the way you're solving it. And I think most execs and they would want to get to that where Uber's now seeing a $10 to $15 million savings, annually off of that. But most companies want to see that benefit, and they're going to say, wow, how do I attack that?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right that this is a problem that permeates nearly all organizations. And so when I say we're focusing on large companies and large organizations, it's just because of our time. But we find that the benefit for an organization, so this could be an organization within a larger one, that the benefit between doing things manually and doing things in an automated way using our brand of AI for this particular problem in IT starts to flip at around 4 to 5 databases. So if you just have a few, you can kind of intuitively think about this. If you have a few 1,000 rows in Excel and maybe a few different tables, you might be able to just maybe not yourself reconcile this work, but hire a small team and they can cobble together the composition of those teams. But if you get a million rows, or you get 20,000 tables, I need to have more of a systemic approach. Our proxy for that data complexity is about 5 databases. And that's just an idea about where it lands. So Uber was a big use case. Others may have it much smaller, but it may be more complex. But that's the point at which you want to generally look for an automated solution, which is what we provide.
That's fantastic. As you're seeing this shift, right? And people are thinking about adopting AI, and as you know, that there's methodologies, there's different frameworks about where to attack their best use cases. To me, if I take a step back, right, and I just want to get your opinion on this, is foundationally, the first thing you have to do is fix your data, right? Because it's like the foundation of everything builds on top of it. Are you seeing that in the industry, or what are you seeing as clients come to you?
You're absolutely correct. It's saying that your data needs to be cleaned, the entities need to be reconciled or disambiguated. You need to create a sort of standard data dictionary. This is absolutely true. This is foundational to being able to do proper analysis, is having a clean foundation from which to do that analysis. And that's true. And that will continue to exist. There are some automated tools to help with that process, but that is still a problem. The issue that I would emphasize here is that making sure that the clients are applying the right tool for the job. If you're just doing exploration, if you're just looking at where might my customers benefit from this different feature, how might I draft these emails? These are not business critical necessarily. You don't want to do a bad job, but
Right.
this is not an end of the year audit. These are way on the different spectrum of assuredness. Right? There are definitely places where good enough is good enough, but there are other places where it's just really not. So that's really foundational as well. When clients are looking at how to deploy AI, I say that in air quotes, they need to be looking at, are they looking for these probabilistic solutions? Some amount of messiness is fine. Or can they not afford to have their audit be 99% correct, right? Or the airplane integrity be 99%
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
These are different tools for the job. On one side, you might have a probabilistic AI, and another side, you would have a deductive, deterministic AI. You got to have the right tools for the job. So large language models, they reason in language, and so they're just not the right tool for the job when applying them to numbers, right? You got to make sure you distinguish these tools. Right tool for the job. So that's how to address, I'd say, this issue of data.
And so as you're thinking about talking to founders, board members, CEOs that are thinking about attacking this, right? Where do they start, right? To your point, right? Everyone's thinking LLMs. It's not applicable here. How do they start to figure out, and where would you recommend that they start to do this analysis and figure out where to apply AI, where to apply machine learning, right? Like I've seen it across the board, and it's funny how much trial and error is going on right now. And, again, there's only one of you, right? But if they're listening to this today, like where should they start? How should they approach?
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure from the board level, down to every leadership team, do something with AI. And, my experience is often when the board is asking this, they themselves don't have any clue or less of an idea than they really should about what an AI implementation would look like at scale and for the benefit of these organizations. And it's probably the right reflex to be experimenting and exploring. Even for myself, who spends all day, every day in this world, it's hard to keep up with some of the new developments. But there are some things I absolutely can say for certain. And for certain is that many of us are already looking beyond chatbots. Chatbots are not the end game.
They're a nice little toy, but yes.
AI deployments. They're a tool that can be useful in particular areas. The awareness that business leaders could bring to this is that everybody else is also using chatbots. So what's your competitive advantage when you're deploying this? You're going to send emails faster? I hope it's something else. And that something else is where we encourage our clients to look. What are the rules around which your business operates? So if chatbots are not the best expression of AI, then if we're looking beyond that, we can say, well, I still have my business that operates. What do I know implicitly and explicitly about customer behavior, about market dynamics, about pricing that I can express as rules? Those rules will benefit by being encoded into digital systems. And it's in that encoding that your team can also collaborate with more alacrity. That's really where this world is going, that this is going to be ultimately a collaboration, a game, that you need to facilitate your team members working together better and your team members working better with external partners. That's where to look, I think, at the deployment of these tools, and where you start is looking at the foundations of how your business is operating. If you're going to look and experiment with chatbots, think, what's my competitive advantage relative to the million other people and other entities that are deploying chatbots?
Yeah. And Eric, most of, like I was saying earlier, most of my guests that are struggling and trying to figure it out, their number one question I always get is around data, is how do I pull it together so I can get the insights and make business decisions? To your point about encoding the business rules and starting to pull that, the correct business decision making and insights out of that data to move the needle, whether that's driving revenue, whether that's saving time, effort, and energy. So if I'm sitting there and I have 25 or 50 databases, right, across systems, am I trying to put everything into a single data lake, or like what is fundamentally, what was your thinking about 300,000 databases into one, right?
When I say we're going to put 300,000 into one, we have a particular way of doing that. So we are not in the bit moving business. We are in the data model composition business. It may seem like to be pedantic, but it's a big issue when people think of data lakes or data warehouses. Data lakes it's a little bit like throwing all of the books of my neighborhood's homes into a big warehouse, and then that's your data lake. All the books are there. Good luck.
Right.
And then we'll say it's a data warehouse. A data warehouse means we're going to structure it a little bit. So then we'll go look at the books. We'll sort them by color.
Right.
That's really what it is. They structure it somewhat, or we'll sort them by height.
Right.
These aren't necessarily structured for the optimal retrieval and use in analytics by leadership. So those are nice phrases. People make a lot of money selling data lakes and selling data warehouses, but that's not the end result at all.
Right.
What we want to ensure is that the business rules that are embedded in those databases also compose with each other. That was the genesis behind Conexus when we got funded by the U.S. government. We, as U.S. taxpayers, paid way more than we could have. I might say should have. There's a lot of problems with the F-35, but one of them was that we couldn't learn anything from the F-16 because we couldn't, with integrity, extract the data models from the F-16 and transport them into an F-35. That same sort of problem applies to our healthcare system, applies to our transportation system, applies to our energy distribution, applies to logistics. It applies everywhere. You have other old, potentially legacy models, and you have heterogeneous modern systems that don't dependably, with integrity, bet your career on it, integrate with each other. That's really where to look. That's what we do with data integration and data model integration to guarantee the assuredness for organizations and allow people to accelerate their careers and accelerate their business.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, that it makes perfect sense in what you're saying. And then from some of the client results that you're seeing, right? I mean, you talked about Uber, and you don't have to mention clients, but when they finally get there, right? I think this is what people are going to say. Well, all right, Eric, what's the outcome, right? What am I able to get out of this? And as you think about how, and again, the next logical thing is everyone's going to ask, okay, and is that where agentic AI will start to make a difference if I get that right? So I'll ask it a different way. When I get that right, what does it unlock? And what are the possibilities beyond that?
The ideal end result here is you are in a cycle of discovery in your business and then encoding that into rules that then get rediscovered as the next thing to automate. If you go through this cycle of having a subject matter expert encode rules, and then explore the expressions of those rules. That cycle will begin to automate your business. And you can just think about what the benefits of automation in your business are in a range of circumstances. But this isn't just chatbots, and it's not therefore just agentic AI, because agentic AI is still, in its current expression as people understand it, is still a probabilistic system. We need to put in rules that embed our subject matter understanding into a process. That's the AI guardrails that we instill. So this is, again, looking at what's beyond large language models, or what's beyond this current hype around agentic AI.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm trying to give our audience that future look. Like, what is the next step? Where's the puck going, right? And I think that's kind of what you're just laying out, is that some of the things that we're hearing about in the quote unquote hype cycle, right? Of generative, of chatbots, of agentic, where that's going. But the real power is in what you're talking about, is encoding those business rules and actually being able to drive more insights and actions and business decisions through that data, right? By having those rules encoded that is shared across the organization. I think that's a huge problem today.
I'll tell you what, one of our largest clients is an oil major in the United States. Had our system deployed in this particular problem of well design. And so you can think of any super complex system from any organization. This could be in healthcare, it could be in logistics, it could be in transportation. Our clients also in each of those industries, and in finance is a big one. Yeah. They, designing this system, had different engineers that had to collaborate in the design of this system. And that collaboration then had to be audited internally, because in this case lives are at stake. In other cases it might just be the business you put at stake. And then there's a government auditor, internal auditor, and then an external auditor. This iteration happened a couple of 100,000 times per year. Wow. And what we did is we deployed an AI to automate that process. Instead of having an iterative sharing of Excel documents, the world would be, I think, frightened about how much the world still runs on Excel and as email attachments. So we apply so much better to have an AI take in these engineering models and reconcile those automatically. Again, this is not a domain of a chatbot, however agentic or however large you want to make it. This needs to have a 100 level percent assurance, and with an internal auditor and an external auditor. So the AI does this, and it has, as this client enumerated it, like 5 benefits. That, one of which was that it shrank the time to energy discovery. So it actually wasted less energy and brought forward the return on investment. And it shrank this return where they started first getting to their resources from 6 weeks to 6 days or something like that. And that was a huge number. Another number they said is, well, our engineers could be redeployed into more interesting work. And in that savings of engineer person time, we saved them, I think they said it was like $55 million US a year. But we also virtually eliminated catastrophic risk. The idea that someone could get really hurt, which happens from failures, even with auditors, right?
Especially in the O&G industry. With wells.
Absolutely. This really does happen. But they said the biggest benefit, they didn't quantify this, but they said the biggest benefit, I already went through on 55 million and 2 other ones that sounded huge. Right. But they said the biggest benefit was whenever we have an error, and errors by their nature are unknown. We don't know where they were, how big they're going to be, or where they appear, or what their nature is. But when we have an error, this last one, they said it took 86 meetings of senior management to try to resolve, and they were at risk of having to shut down production because it failed an audit. And they said there's no amount of money that can reclaim 86 hours of meetings from senior management. So that's what clients can look forward to in deploying AI properly is a whole bunch of savings, not just a quantified savings of money, not just an assuredness to government, and not just the savings of lives, although that could be arguably the biggest, but the savings of executive time to be just doing better work than searching for and reconciling errors.
Wow, that's phenomenal. And see, that to me, we're big glass half full, turn into AI here, because we know that if they employ solutions like this. And again, maybe not at that level, but the outcomes and the benefits are, and like you said, even the ones that were not planned for can be phenomenal. So to me, Eric, that is a phenomenal, example of doing this the right way and not freeing up executives' time, saving lives, saving tons of money. And again, now they can reinvest that into something else and do it somewhere else in the organization. Yeah.
Big benefits of deploying AI correctly.
Yes, exactly. If you had one piece of advice for a founder or CEO watching this, or about where to attack this or where to start, because we still have a bunch of folks that are just dabbling, right? And thinking about some of the things that you've just laid out about where things are going and where we think they're heading, which is looking beyond agentic and chatbots and that kind of stuff. What would that piece of advice be for that founder or CEO?
I think looking at rules that you can install as guardrails for your AI deployments are a smart place to be, because these can really otherwise go off the rails. It comes to mind the Air Canada example where the chatbot wrongly said that a client was going to get some discount on an airfare, and this thing ultimately went to court, where Air Canada tried arguing that this was some separate legal entity, which was a novel legal theory. They lost in court. But this is just is one example of many that we've heard about, where chatbots they can do other things. You want to be putting in guardrails. You want to be defining your rules. That's one thing that I could offer to people beginning to deploy trustworthy AI.
I love it, and you've been in it, longer than most people. I've had a few folks that have been in it, over 20 years. Most people don't. Pre-November of 2022, didn't understand anything about AI, right? Until ChatGPT launched. But the evolution that you're seeing, and obviously most of it was pattern recognition, machine learning, for years, and that's been going on a long time. Do you see the the evolution picking up now that we're kind of, what I think is kind of on the tail end of the hype cycle, right? Now we're getting into brass tacks of implementation and people really saying, I need to turn into AI, right? But not, like you said, at the board level, sometimes it's just, hey, you got to throw AI somewhere. But right now, I think that there are leaders out there going, I need a fundamental strategy about thinking where to go. As you start to look down the road the next 18 months, what do you see?
I see, as much as we might think from the revelations of DeepSeek and that accomplishment in China, somehow suggesting that there is an equilibrium globally, I see really a widening gap between at least those places in the world. I'd say there's only a few little centers, those places in the world that are moving quickly, and those places in the world, generically, we could just say they have geographic proximity, geographic co-locations. Those places in the world that get AI less and are kind of less prepared for what is coming. I see a lot of people not understanding what AI means for them today and what it's going to mean for them 18 months from now. And I fear for some of those organizations that are not taking this seriously. I think that everyone needs to be experimenting, even with chatbots, with all their limitations, daily. I think the younger generation has the right idea, where they are going there first to be interacting with one's daily tasks. That's where to go, just because these change month to month, if not week to week. And some models are better in other domains, and you need to develop your own skills also around working with them, because we've had 30 years almost in working with a Google search, or web searches for 30 years. And so we're trained in putting in little keywords, but to give broader contexts and to build on that in a project, we need to develop our own skills. As we are defining in this conversation, defining rules of one's business, that's a whole nother discipline that we need to get comfortable with and develop an infrastructure for. 18 months from now, I think it's going to be a very different world.
I totally agree with you. And again, it's why we started the podcast. It's why we want to get this message out, and we want to help as many founders, CEOs, and leaders by having great guests like you. Tell them kind of where the puck's going and what they need to be prepared for and where they need to turn into. So, Eric, I can't thank you enough for spending this time with us and for educating our audience. I love what you guys are doing at Conexus, and I hope to have you back if we're lucky enough. But tell for the clients out there that say, "Hey, I need to talk to Eric and his team." How can they get in touch with you? We'll put all the links in the show notes.
Yeah, Conexus.com.
Excellent. You guys are doing some just unbelievable stuff, and I wish there was more of you, because I talk to founders every day, and they're just nowhere near attacking the right parts. And to me, foundationally, it has to start with data. And like I said, I love what you all do. So again, thank you for sharing your insights with us.
It's been a fun conversation.
Excellent. Well, guys, that wraps up this episode of Future Proof. And as you can see, just talking to Eric today and about him and his team, this is exactly why you need to be future proofing your business. And so continue to watch, and we will keep bringing exciting guests on so you can move the needle in your business. But as Eric said, it starts with the rules for your business. So if there's one thing you take away today, please take that away. That needs to be one of your top priorities. So thanks again, Eric. We'll talk to you guys later.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.